Hi guys, Dave Wilson here again, and today, great little project, we're going to do a transformation. And what we're going to do is we're going to transform my scrap bucket and some scrap silver, and we're going to transform it into a nice little bangle. And this has been textured and patterned and oxidized, and I had a little bit of silver left over, so I also made a little ring as well, and I'm going to show you how I do it. And the tool that I need to do this, to transform this silver into the strip, is the Pepetools Ultra Series rolling mill. So if you're the proud owner, I'm going to show you a few tricks and tips on how to use it. So grab your scrap silver, follow me. So this is my scrap bucket here, all sterling silver, so make sure you don't contaminate it with anything else. So I'm going to use about an ounce. Over here I've got my little crucible, so I'm going to use this to melt it down. Very important, I'm using a Smith's little torch, and this is a multi-jet casting nozzle, very important. Now this is my ingot mould. Check very carefully the dimensions, because you need to make sure that when you cast an ingot it will actually fit in your rolling mill. If it's too big, then it's not going to be any use. Another thing, when I bought this is cast iron, it was coated in a kind of paint, so burn it off, clean it out, make sure it's clean. And I use a bit of grease on a brush here, so use some grease or engine oil just to lubricate it, and that stops it from getting stuck. When you pour it, start at one end and just pour along so you get a nice consistent strip. Start to melt it down, and then what you want to do is add a little bit of borax, that will help with any impurities. So we're just about molten now, you can see it jiggling around. So what I want to do now is I want to start applying some heat on the edge of the crucible to keep that warm, and start to warm up the ingot mould as well. Now I'm not trying to get it red hot, I'm just trying to heat it a little bit. It just stops the shock when the silver goes into something cold. Okay, let's go for it. So, there we go. Rinse it and piddle it. So this is quite nice. It's a little bit thinner at this end, but it's not too bad. So I think I'm going to use this one. So this is the Pepetools Ultra Series rolling mill, and this is the 130, so this is a maximum size. And the important thing is that this is with the combination rollers. That's the important thing. So what we're going to do is we've got the ingot, and I'm going to put it through the V-shaped rollers here, one way round, and then we're going to turn it 90 degrees, and we're going to keep putting it through until we end up with a square piece of wire. And then I'm going to put it through the flat rollers, and we're going to flatten it down so I end up with a long nice strip, and that's going to be really long. Then what we're going to do is put it back in the V-shaped rollers to work on the edges, and then finally we're going to use the flat rollers here to put a texture and emboss a texture into it. So let's zoom in, let's get started. So we're going to start with the tapered end, rollers all the way down, and then just open them until I can get the end in. There we go. And keep rotating it, so put it through one way, rotate it 90 degrees, put it through the other way. So just keep going through until the whole thing is uniform. Now as you wind, you should be able to wind it with one hand, okay? If it's too difficult, you need to back it off a little bit. So just keep winding it through. And then just on the top though, just a little, half a turn, something like that. And then just keep putting it through until it's all one consistent length. Now if it starts to get hard to put your metal through the rollers, it probably needs annealing because it will work hard and very quickly. So put it on your solder block and just heat it to a deep red colour leave it for a second, then quench it, and make sure it's absolutely dry before you bring it back, because you don't want any moisture on your rollers. So you want to keep going, winding it through the V-shaped rollers until you can get the roller completely down. And it all goes through, and it's all nice and consistent all the way through. So check, and you should have a nice square bar now. So I'm just going to anneal this and just straighten it out. Once you've got the rollers touching, the resulting bar will be about 4.5mm square, perfectly flat, perfectly square on all sides. I'm now going to use the flat part of the rollers to reduce it down in thickness to about 1.8mm. First, I'm going to open up the rollers and just put the metal in, and then clamp it down just so it touches the top of the bar. I'm then going to remove the bar, and I'm going to give the top about half a turn, and I'm now going to keep rolling it through till it's nice and flat, and then in each time turning it down about half a turn until I progressively reduce it in width. Make sure that your bar stays on the flat part and it doesn't wander into either the groove sections at either side, because that might distort it. You can see now after a couple of turns we're down to about 3mm thickness, and it's getting really long, and it's also getting quite hard, so I need to anneal it now. So as you work it, keep annealing it. You'll notice that as you start to flatten it down, it'll get longer and longer and longer. It won't get wider, but it just increases in length, and that's because of the way the rollers extend it lengthways. So a couple of more times through, and we're now down to about 1.8mm, which is a nice thickness, and again you can see the length of it. So I'm going to put it in the V-shaped rollers, because the bottom of the V-shaped rollers are flat. So I'm just going to pop it in, and I'm clamping it down until it just squeezes at the top and bottom there. Nice and gentle, and I'm just going to roll it through the whole thing just to make sure that it's the same width all the way along. Here you can see the lengths. I've got 16cm, which is going to be used to make the torque bangle. I've got 8cm, which will be more than ample to make a large ring, and a couple of little offcuts, I'll use these for the earring. But before that, we need to clean everything up. So I've got a little sanding disc here, and it's important that you really go over the whole piece and check that there's no indentations or dents or cracks in it. To texture your pieces you can use whatever you want: leaves, fabric, texture plates, absolutely anything. I've got here some thin sheets of metal, and it's been laser cut with this beautiful design. I think it's designed for going around a mirror or something, but this is going to be great for embossing into the silver. Here I've got a sheet of copper, and I'm going to use this to protect the rollers. So I'm going to place the metal on top of the copper, and then lay my silver on top of it in such an orientation. I'm going to try and make sure I get the best part of the pattern. I've opened the rollers, and I'm going to put the whole sandwich into the rollers and just tighten it down just until the rollers touch the top of the silver there. I'm now going to remove them, and I'm going to give it half a turn at the top, and then when I put it through, that half a turn will give me enough pressure to emboss that pattern into the bottom surface of the silver. And this is the result, a nice embossed pattern, and so I'm going to repeat this for the other pieces. Because of the random nature of the texturing, you might find that there's a little bit of distortion along the edges. So once again, I'm just going to put it through the mill, edge on, nice and gently, and this is just going to flatten it down and just make sure it's a consistent width all the way along. Here I've got the Pepetools designer bench block, which is really smooth, and I'm just using a rubber mallet to just tap the silver straight. Now it's important that you keep the pattern face up so that you don't flatten it, and only use a rubber or rawhide mallet just to hammer the front. Likewise, if you lay it edge on, you'll be able to see any gaps where it's distorted, so just use a nice polished plenishing hammer just to tap it gently on the top, and it'll keep it all nice and straight and level to the surface of the bench block. Here we have all the pieces flattened and straightened out. For the bangle, I've just rounded off the ends with a medium cut flat file, and then I've gone over the back and the sides with a 500 grit buffing stick. You can see here I've done the same with the earrings, but of course with the ring strip you don't want to round the ends off because you're going to solder it, so with the ring I've cut this straight, and again I've gone over everything with a 500 grit emery stick. I'm going to polish all these pieces up now on the buffing wheel. So you can use Tripoli, but I'm using my favourite Menzerner IP polish, and this is on a loose cotton mop. Very important, polish the back and the edges, but be very careful on the front, don't polish away your texture. Now to make a bandle, you might have a bandle mandrel, but if you don't have one, you just need something round to form it on. So I like to use this round wooden mallet. I find this really great because I can hold it. So keep working it round, and so make sure that it's nicely curved and the gap at the back is opposite the front, so it's nice and symmetrical. Just a little trick here, to flatten it down, sandwich your bandle between two pieces of wood and just hammer it quite firmly on the top, and that will keep it nice and straight and flat, but it won't mark it. So next to the earrings, and I'm just going to mark them with a little marker there, centre punch them, and then I'm going to drill them with a 1mm drill bit. Now here's a little tip, I'm using a very small round burr and I'm just popping it into the edge of the drill holes and just spinning it round very gently, and that will help to remove any burrs or sharp edges as a result of drilling the holes. I'm using a pair of 5mm round jump rings made from 1mm round sterling wire, and you can just attach the hooks and close them with 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. Simple as that, and then pop them in the tumbler. To make the ring, begin by checking that the ends are perfectly flat and square, so just run your file over the ends, and then here I've got a pair of half round and half flat parallel jawed pliers. So use the half round side on the inside flat part of the ring and just bend it round until the ends touch. So if you want to make a smaller ring, just cut it out nice and square and check it on your ring mandrel and make sure that the edges are nice and flush. So a little bit of borax, and I'm using a pallion of hard solder. You'll note that I'm heating it from the outside so that it'll draw the solder through to the outside and create a nice even joint. And there we go. Tap it on the ring mandrel to ensure it's perfectly round. Do one side and then flip it over. And I'm just cleaning up the solder joint with a half round file. This is a nice little trick. I like to put it on a sheet of sandpaper, 600 grit, and just move it round, and that will help to make the edges nice and flat and smooth. Go over the whole thing with a 600 grit buff stick to smooth off all the edges, and then finally finish it off with Tripoli, or in my case the Menzerner IP polish, and then chuck it in the tumbler. Finally, here you can see the pieces out of the tumbler. Now of course, how you finish them is entirely up to you. To oxidise your silver, you can use liver of sulphur, either the traditional powder or I've got the new liver of sulphur gel, and you just put a tiny little drop into a dish and you can apply it directly to your silver with a paintbrush. No mess, no fuss. And within a few seconds you'll start to see it darken. Wait till you've got the desired colour and then rinse it thoroughly in warm water and dry it really well with a tissue. You can, if you want, repeat it and add more, just keep painting it and build it up and up and up, and it will get darker and darker. So the last part is to get a little polishing pad or a 1200 buff stick or maybe a micro mesh polishing pad, and just very lightly just rub over the top. And what you're doing is you're just polishing the high spots, but you're going to leave the patina in the recesses where the pattern is. And hopefully you can see that there. Do remember, if you want to oxidise the earrings, it's much better to do it if you remove the hooks, because they're very easy to just pop them back on again later. So polished or oxidised, the choice is yours. But either way, I'm sure you'll agree it's an incredible transformation from the pile of scrap silver that we started with. And it's all due to the Pepe Ultra Series rolling mill. So I hope I've inspired you to get melting your scrap and get playing with your rolling mill. I've been Dave Wilson, thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon on the next video. Bye for now.